Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Muhammad, thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we are broadcasting live once again on Friday, February the 9th. Thank you so much for tuning in as we have a lot of great conversations. First, let's ask the question, are we celebrating Black History Month? It's been a little bit over a week into the Black History Month, and now I think it's a good time for us to do an assessment and an analysis about our celebration. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, we'll talk about how schools are increasingly becoming locations for hate crimes, according to FBI data. We're going to discuss that with our educator, Kimberly Morrow. Also, later on, should parents of school shooters be charged? As we talk about the violence in the schools, who should be held accountable and responsible? And this is around the case of Jennifer Crumbley. We'll give you the latest details on that situation and the Democrats' dilemma for President Biden's health versus politics, as we heard in that scathing report yesterday that the president responded to about his health, his memory. The question is, how is the Democrat going to move forward, and how should we move forward dealing with this situation? So we got all of those conversations, and of course, I want to hear from you. So make sure y'all stay tuned. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. We had a little bit of technical difficulties yesterday, but we now are back. We're back live. It's Friday, February the 9th, and I appreciate each and every one of you for joining us in the discussion. As we're streaming live on our home network of Black Star Network, make sure you go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.org. .com, and download the app for free. Follow us on social media. And of course, we ask for your financial support as we are powering through this digital space, creating content just for us. So make sure y'all do your due diligence and support us today. And we truly, truly appreciate all of the donations and all of the love that we have been receiving thus far. So again, go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Also, folks, we're streaming live on Amazon News or Amazon Fire TV. We're also on Amazon Prime Video, so you can check us out there. Find us on the Prime Video app under Live TV, The News, or find us on Amazon.com under Prime Video, then Live TV, The News. We're also on the Freevee network, so make sure you check us out there on now under News for Black Star Network and on Plex TV. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, streaming live. Just search for Black Star Network or find us on the Live TV, The News, and Opinion. And of course, we're streaming on Roland Martin's social media pages. You can check us out on Roland Martin's Facebook page. Big shout out to the crew that's on there, as well as on Roland Martin's YouTube channel. So big shout out there. There we go. And we are also streaming on, and you also check out the crew on the X platform. So big shout out to all of those on the X platform. All right, folks, let's jump right into it because my sister Kimberly Morrow is joining me today, as she does each and every Friday as one of our great new contributors. And we got a lot to talk about. And of course, folks, I'm expecting to hear from all of you. So make sure y'all get ready to check us out, to post your comments as we are streaming live right now. And Kimberly, good afternoon. Happy Friday. How you feeling today?
Happy Friday. I'm feeling good. I'm repping Kobe Bryant today, Kobe and Gia.
Yes.
In honor of him getting his statue yesterday.
That is dope. You know, I got to get some Kobe stuff. I moved out to LA and didn't get any Kobe stuff. Like, not as if Kobe is nowhere to be found in the city of Los Angeles. But yes, you're right. A big 19-foot bronze statue that is standing out in front of Crypto, the Crypt as they call it, Crypto.com Arena, in honor of the legendary basketball player, the father, the husband, the philanthropist, and just a brother who has just brought a whole nother element to it, the great Kobe Bryant, and it's something. I saw the statue. I don't know if anybody saw the picture of the statue yesterday, Kimberly, but the It's a beautiful statue. According to his wife, Vanessa Bryant, he chose the pose. And I think this is one of three statues that they're supposed to be, erecting for Kobe Bryant, if I'm not mistaken. But at least that first one is right in front of crypto.com. So we should definitely, big shout out to Kobe Bryant, to the great legacy and his family. And of course, our hearts are still with his family at this time, because I don't know when a person can ever get over something like that. Yeah. So big shout out to you for repping. Kimberly, let's talk a little bit about something that's near and dear to your heart. Oh, there he is. That's Kobe right there, y'all. That's a great statue too, man. It's beautiful.
Statue.
It's a beautiful statue right there. Like I said, there we go. He chose the pose himself. So, he wanted to do that. This is from that moment. He had that 81-point game, his final game, 81 points, and he just pointed to the sky. So big shout out to the Kobe Bryant family. Kimberly, let's talk a little bit about something that's near and dear to your heart, which is, of course, Black History Month. And I want to kind of get your take on this. This is based on an op-ed that was written in CNN. And I thought it was quite fascinating to have this approach. This is by a brother by the name of Jamar Tisby. He wrote an opinion piece, said, we could be getting so much more out of Black History Month. And then he goes into discussing, here's how. Now, Mr. Tisby, he is an author himself. He is also, he has a PhD. He's the author of the book, The Color of Compromise. He has another book coming out called The Spirit of Justice. He's a professor of history at Simmons College of Kentucky. And he wrote this piece around how we are celebrating Black History Month. And I figured, well, we're about, 9 days into the month. It's a good time for us to kind of do a little check-in to see, first and foremost, how do you think we are celebrating Black History Month? Are we doing enough? To Mr. Tisby's point, Kimberly, do you think we're doing enough?
So I'm going to say no, and this is where we probably agree, he and I. Number one, it shouldn't be a month. We shouldn't be taking a month to celebrate Black history. We should be honoring Black history all year long. And I'm sure, to his point, because I read the article where he said, when we are talking about, for example, the bombing of the Birmingham church, discussing other bombings that took place. Well, it's only a month and you're trying to hit all these different historical facts and events. It's impossible. That's why, again, going back to Carter G. Woodson, he never intended this to last forever. It was started as a week. It was supposed to get the schools to teach Black history all year long. So of course we're doing it wrong. We're set up for failure because it wasn't meant to be celebrated for a month forever.
So we're doing it wrong. I want to share with you and with our crew what Mr. Tisby has said about this. And then we're going to have to take a quick pause. But look at what Mr. Tisby said. Take a look at this, folks. Let's put up quote one. Thank you, Lise. He said, we tend to view Black history as isolated points on a timeline instead of a coherent and continuous story. When we look at Black history as a set of separate facts without their proper context, we can miss the significance and the beauty of it. This troubling lack of context is also why so many people think history is boring. If it's just memorizing names and dates devoid of the compelling stories that surround them, then why should anyone care? When we consider context, we address pivotal questions. Who were the other historical actors influencing outcomes? What other events served as precursors? What were the ramifications and after effects? I think that is spot on, Kimberly. I think it's spot on for us to even ask those type of questions, and more importantly, to take on this view, because now that I'm starting to see things, right? And when you start to see things as being interrelated and not just independent, when you're talking about the history of a people, especially the rich history of Black people. I mean, there's so many words to describe our history, right? We have painful moments, we have triumphant moments, we have all of these different moments. But when you're starting looking at the history, it really is hard to just say, one thing doesn't affect another thing. And how important is context? How important is it for us to have an understanding that this history today, even though it may be hundreds of years, we often have this conversation about chattel slavery, for example, that people say, oh, let's end it. But as if the impact of that experience hasn't spilled over into 2024. So how important is it to have this as a continuing story and not just an isolated period of time?
It's very important. And here, let me give you a real world example. When I was in a classroom, there was a section in the textbook where we were talking about different ways to protest, different ways to boycott. So I referenced the Montgomery bus boycott. But what I didn't teach it in the way that I had learned it. We all learned that it started when Rosa Parks sat on the bus and she refused to give up her seat and she was arrested. And then there was this boycott that ensued. The way I taught it to my students, we studied that the women's political council, I hope I'm saying that right, of Alabama, they're the ones that actually been working on this for years.
Right.
And a year prior, Joanne Robinson, who rarely, I think recently she started getting credit, but Joanne Robinson had written a letter to the mayor on behalf of the Women's Political Council, stating that if they did not remedy all of these things, that they would boycott, and they had a year to remedy these things. These things didn't happen in a vacuum, that Rosa Parks sat on the bus and then the boycott started. This had been something that they had been working on for years. And then she's the one who ran off the flyers and called for the boycott for that day. And then they brought in Martin Luther King Jr. after the fact. So these are things that my students were stunned, because remember, from elementary school, they had been learning that Rosa Parks was tired. She sat on the bus. She refused to get up. And this is what ensued. So now they're understanding this was an entire movement. This took planning. It took strategy. So they're learning this in an entirely different context. So what I'm also teaching them is strategy, is organization, is planning. And so we're putting it in context, and it's not just one person who's the hero of this story. There are so many other people that were involved. So now they're learning that as well. So that's why I said I agree with him. But again, that's because we're trying to squeeze everything into 1 month, and it can't be squeezed into a month. It just can't.
Well, and you know what? We got to take our first break. But when we come forward, Kimberly, I want to kind of talk a little bit more on that, because, yes, I get it. This year, for example, we have 29 days in a year because of the way the calendar is set up and everything. But there's nothing really stopping us. Well, we could have said this probably like a couple of years ago. Now it's laws. But there's nothing really stopping us from not teaching Black history all year round. You know what I'm saying? Now, will it be done in a traditional school setting? It may not be because of the recent laws. But what's stopping us from teaching our children about Black history all year round? I mean, you are the principal of a school that is online. So you understand that you can still get information to a child through the barriers of all of these other things, getting to the place where they are, which is at home, and having these conversations and sharing this knowledge. So it's partly, when I hear some folks say, well, we only got 28 doing, that means that you are expecting somebody else to teach your child about their history versus you taking on the responsibility. Yes, I mean, if you think about it, and I'm not saying this, Kimberly, don't get mad if I say this, but there are very few groups of people that have a whole month to celebrate, right? I think Native American History Month is another group of people. But my point is that, we already know how the system is set up. So should we just say, you know what, that is what it is. we're going to do our thing on this side. And I want to kind of get your take on that. I want you to get a little mad at me right now, Kimberly. I want you to get a little upset with me because I feel like, sometimes we use that as an excuse to not teach our history, to not learn, to not share, and to not essentially do our part outside of the traditional classroom setting to do something that we say is good for our children. So I want to have your take on that. Folks, stay with us. We're just getting started here on The Culture. Post your comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. Are we celebrating Black History wrong? I would love to hear what you got to say, crew. Post your comments as we're streaming live on Roland Martin's YouTube channel, as well as Roland Martin's Facebook page. And stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat to the Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We are talking about Black history as we are 9 days into the new month. And we're asking a question, are we celebrating Black history wrong? Now, this is based upon an op-ed that one brother named Jamar Tisby had posted. He wrote a piece for CNN, an op-ed. And he talks about Black history should be seen and taught as a continuous story in its proper context, and not just as isolated dates and names and things that we are asking young people to remember. So I'm asking this question, I'm posing this question to you, crew, and we've been chatting it up with my contributor, Kimberly Morrow, who is an educator. She's a principal, she's a public speaker. And this is something that's near and dear to her heart as we look at this. But Sister Kimberly, I want to kind of get your take on that. People are saying, okay, we got the shortest month of the year. This is not fair. But no one is stopping us from teaching Black history of the times of the year. And I mean, again, there may be some laws in some states that say that you got to omit certain information. But I'm saying for us as Black folks, imparting this wisdom and knowledge to Black children, and even to some other children from other communities, right? But there's nothing stopping us. Let me just share with you very quickly what some of the crew members are saying, because I agree. Arlene Starks, welcome back to the chat. You posted something I think would makes a lot of sense. You mentioned that there could be things done within the community where you're talking about, having book clubs and having meetings about it, relating to our history, bi-weekly and weekly meetings. Like, we could do things within our purview, within our network, within our community, where we don't have to wait for somebody to teach on that. What's your take on that argument, Kimberly?
I agree. And there is something I want you to know too. On this point, we most definitely agree. So if you recall a couple of weeks ago when we were having a conversation and I talked about how my parents didn't talk to me about applying for scholarships and all of that stuff with regards to college. But that's one thing that my parents talked about at home was our history. So while I was going to school and in the textbook, I only saw that we showed up a certain number of times. When I came home, my father was giving me our history. He had us watching all sorts of documentaries, all different types of movies, talking to us. This is where my love of history came from. It didn't come from a teacher. It came from at home, because I learned very early in the textbook where they talked about World War I, and there were only white soldiers that we saw in that textbook. When I got home, my father informed me, no, your grandfather served it during World War I. And so there are so many things that we as parents, as grandparents, as aunts and uncles, we can definitely share our stories and share these historical events and put them in context for our children. You're absolutely correct. We don't have to wait until February to celebrate. We can celebrate all year long outside of the public school structure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, here's another part of this, which I haven't heard much about. So, Kimberly, you tell me what's your take on this. Even though we talk about Black history, right, we don't seem to delve too deep in talking about Black Latino history, like Afro-Latino history. We don't talk about the fact that Black folks, like myself and many others, mixed with Native American blood, right? So we don't explore that stuff, right? And we don't talk about the fact that you got Black folks down in the Caribbean islands, right? And when we start to bring other groups of our people of the diaspora into the conversation, some of our people get really upset. They're like, man, this is about Black American history. No. We said Black history. And so for the sake of context, and this is why I think a lot of us, and this is, y'all walk with me on this one, crew. I think this is partly why when we have a conversation about those other groups of our people, that it's hard for our people to digest, because very early on, we seen ourselves as being separate from our people down in the islands. We've seen ourselves being separate from our people down and from South America, and we see our people separate from the African, right? Because we're like, oh no, this is Black American history, but that's not what the month is called. The month is called Black History, and they are all part of the diaspora. So what's your take on that in terms of context? Do we need to expand the context of those conversations to include our people in those other spaces?
Yes, we do. And I'm over here chuckling because when I would teach this in the classroom, the way I would explain it to the students, listen, we all came from Africa, and some boats took us to, some of the ships dropped off in Europe, some ships, dropped off in the Caribbean, some ships dropped off in South America, and then some ships dropped off here in North America. So we are all, and when a lot of times when slaves ran away, who did they run to? They went with the indigenous people. So we are, all of this is tied in together, and people that do that, when they try to separate, that bothers me a lot. It truly does, because we are all one. We all came from, if you want to break it down, we all came from the motherland, every last one of us.
Right.
And so we're here now, and hey, we're all in this together. So, but again, it goes to who is teaching this. So it all depends on the teacher. If you get a teacher that understands this and they're able to bring all that information together, that's wonderful. If you don't, then it's hit or miss. This is not regulated. They don't have a pacing guide to tell you how to do Black History Month. It's all based on the teacher. And some teachers don't do it. There was a school that I worked in. We did not celebrate Black History Month at all.
Wow. And that was, how long ago was that that you had that experience, Kimberly?
That was from 2008 until I think the first year that I was there and we celebrated was in 2018 or 19. So for about 10 years we didn't. But the thing was, that's because they celebrated the culture of the school. So I'm not going to say they didn't celebrate Women's History Month, none of that stuff. Their whole thing was, we're just going to celebrate the culture of the school. So,
but that's crazy. That's still crazy to me, because what was the monumental event that happened in 2008, y'all?
How do
you not celebrate Black History when you got the first Black president?
That particular year, when that president was elected, there was a memo that went out to teachers saying that they did not have to show the inauguration. Never in my teaching career had I ever seen anything where it's told teachers you don't have to show the inauguration. Never had I ever seen.
That's crazy. Like that is crazy. And so that just goes to show you, Kimberly, that there is so much work that has to be done. But that's crazy that even over a 10-year period, you talk about the culture of the school versus talking about the culture of the students. That is crazy. All right, let me get to a couple of more comments before we take our next pause. Tiana said the only difference between us is who got dropped off first. I love it. Love it, Tiana. I love it. It comes down to that, right? Like who got dropped off first? And I mean, that's a very simplistic way of putting it, but there's a lot of truth in that. Tiana, you also say it's Black people throughout the diaspora. Absolutely. That we don't talk about. For some reason, we got this block in our minds or in our spirits that they're not Black enough. If they come from across the water from any place, they're not Black enough. That's not real Blackness. And that's why we're in the space that we're in, because we put up these type of divisions amongst ourselves. Brian Christian, my guy, you said, so then it's Black history is world history. Come on. That's what Jamar Tisby was talking about, context. if we understood, imagine if we were taught that when we were younger, that Black history is world history. Black history is, I saw a couple of you say, Black history is American history. Context. Now you see yourself, but then you see yourself as part of something bigger. And so it makes all the difference in the world instead of just thinking like it's just this moment in the civil rights movement, it's just this moment in chattel slavery. It makes all the difference in the world. I want to share this with Jamar Tisby, the writer of the CNN piece, what he said as we close out on this. Recommended ways to celebrate Black history. And Kimberly, you tell me if you agree or disagree with this. Let's show this real quickly. Recommended ways that Mr. Tisby suggested that we have a conversation about Black history. Go to a museum alone. Folks, you can't beat that. Can't beat it. Got to go to a museum. In Baltimore, there was the Great Blacks and Wax Museum. In California, there is the California African American Museum. In whatever state you in, there should be some place that you can go to find your history. Number two, read a whole book on some aspect of Black history. So if it's the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, if it's what's happening during the Jim Crow period of time, read a book, not just an article, a book, and deepen your understanding and knowledge of it. Ask a family or friend about a historical event. We got grandmothers, we got aunties, we got moms, we got griots within our families to show us or can tell us what it was like, firsthand information, and that's how the stories are being told. It used to be told in our families. It's not as much as emphasized now, but we can get back to that tradition. Explain some historical event to someone else or a child. If you know how to teach a child or an adult about Black history, that means you have a grasp of the knowledge. You understand the dynamics. You can put these things in a proper context. And then finally, access primary resources. What are the primary resources you're talking about? You can go watch documentaries. You can read interviews. You can do so much more. So Kimberly, before we take our next pause, these recommended ways, do you agree or disagree? Or you want to add something to them?
I agree, and I would add, do your family history. That should be a project that you do. Research your family history, and you're going to find within your family the different ways that they played a part in this American history or world history. So that's a project that I've done with my students over the years, and I continue to do with my students.
Absolutely. Tiz is one of our great LA watchers, Kimberly. Tiz says, let's be honest, there are some parents who don't know about Black history. And absolutely, there are some parents like that. But Anastasia, you responded to Tiz and said, yes, because they never took the time to read a book before the Mayflower, Henrietta Lacks, MLK book on economics. Do your family members' history, just to your point. So yeah, that requires us. Black history is not just about us just saying, oh, how great and how grateful we are about being Black, but there's so much history. There's so much history. I haven't come across anybody that has known all of the elements of history about Black people in this country. And let's not even talk about Black people within the diaspora. Please, it's just too much to cover. We got great ones among us, but that who can kind of key in on a certain thing. But if you notice that any great historian always take the things that have happened to the past and brought them to the modern day to give us context as to what we're seeing, to help us to understand if there are patterns of history that we need to look at, and to potentially give us the roadmap for the future. So it's all about the history, the context, and how we understand it. All right, look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about how schools might be, it has increasingly become new locations of hate crime, according to latest FBI data. And then later on, we got to talk about the fact that out of this violence that we see at schools, whether it's on the elementary school level, junior high level, or even on the college level, who should be held responsible when violence is done? We're going to have that conversation about the case of Jennifer Crumbly. So folks, stay with us. We still got a lot more to discuss in the first half of the culture right here on the Black Star Network.
hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, waste $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, and I'm joined by our contributor and educator, principal, our academic and educational contributor, my sister, Kimberly Morrow, as we talk about some of these issues related to education. I want to switch gears just for a little bit, take a few moments of this first half of the show to talk about something that, Kimberly, you might have been aware of, but for our watchers, they may not have known that schools are increasingly becoming locations for hate crimes, according to new FBI data. I want to share this with you. Take a look at this, folks, and this is coming from NBC News. That schools, colleges, and universities were the third most common location for a hate crime to be committed in the United States from 2018 to 2022. According to new FBI data, which with more than 4,300 reported offenses, or 7.7% of total offenses over those 5 years taking place in an educational setting, The number of reported hate crimes offenses across all categories increased from 8,492 in 2018 to 13,346 in 2022, according to a report released by the FBI. Now, the most common location for a hate crime was in home or residential settings, followed by those occurring on highways, roads, and alley. What do you make of that, Kimberly? That schools are now becoming these locations for hate crimes. What do you attribute that to?
I think it goes back to the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. Does America hate its children? Our children are the most vulnerable, but they're just the least protected. It's easy to target a school. It's really that simple. And there's just nothing sacred with these terrorists. They don't care that it's children that they're targeting. They don't care that they're hurting children. And clearly, the powers that be don't care to protect them either.
It's just that simple and plain. And I find it to be very interesting and fascinating that this is the case, that we're starting to see, like more mass shootings, more school shootings have been happening over these past 3 or 4 years than at any other period in America. And I'm wondering, what is the thing that is causing people to be so angry? And a lot of these are students. These aren't like adults. So these are a lot of students. But the school environment, I wanted to have this conversation with you. Did you find that as an educator that the school environment became less and less conducive to the growth and cultivation of students across the board? Did you find that the school environment was less safe, physically safe, or the infrastructure was falling apart too much that, you were like, you know what? I'm going to pursue a different path to education, that I'm going to take the education piece online. What do you think that is?
No, I can't say safety wasn't an issue with any of the schools where I worked, and I worked at a number of schools. I never felt like safety was an issue. But what is an issue, especially with these lone gunmen, is their perceived bullying. Now, I'm not saying bullying does not take place at schools. It does take place in schools. But sometimes some of these students might perceive things that are happening. And again, I like to put things in context. I had a student once, I'm sitting in the office with him, and I knew that this student had mental issues. They were documented, they're in his files and everything. And as I'm talking to this student, I could tell something was really off that particular day. And I asked him, I was like, "Are you hearing voices now?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "What are they telling you to do anything?" He said, "Yes." And basically they were telling them, his voices were telling him to hurt me in that moment. Yes. And so yes. So I eased on out and went straight to I was a principal at the time. So I went to campus security, whose office was adjacent to mine. So it wasn't I didn't have to walk far. And I just poked my head and I said, "I need you to come in and so we could deal with this." So there truly are mental health issues. And sometimes the bullying might, exacerbates things. Again, I'm not saying bullying does not occur, but sometimes in some of these students' minds, things are happening that truly aren't really attached to reality.
Right. That's interesting. Now, here's another element of this report, of this data, folks, that I want to share, and I want to get your take on this. The data, according to the report, also revealed the number of reported offenses at schools based on their bias motivation. The most common were anti-Black. They're finding that there are over nearly 1,700 cases of anti-Black, some anti-Black violence. The next most common is anti-LGBTQ, which has around about 900 cases. And then the last one was anti-Jewish cases where there was some sort of, hate against Jewish students. 745 offenses over the course of 5 years. So Black folks LGBTQ community members, and young Jewish students and children are the three major targets of these hate crimes in America. What can we do, Kimberly, to change that?
Well, this is an aside. I'll answer that question, but this is an aside. I'll tell you something. If the majority of these shooters looked like you or me, the problem would have already been solved from the time of Columbine. If those were two students of color, let's just put it out there. If those were two Black students that went into that school and shot up that school, we would not be sitting here having this conversation nearly 20 years later about these school shootings. So again, it goes back, it goes back to what we talked about before. America really doesn't love its children, and they really do not love us, period. And if it had been a Black shooter, the gun issue in this country, they would have solved it. So a lot of the problems that we're having, you know, all of these attacks on our schools, on our college campuses, they are happening the majority of the time by white shooters. And then they get a pass. It's like, oh, there's mental illness going on, or these things are happening. And then nobody wants to change the gun laws. That's really the issue. Why are we still allowing these automatic assault rifles and all of these weapons of mass destruction that students can easily have access, or young people can have access to? That's ridiculous right there. But as to your other question about the anti-Black, anti-Jewish, anti-LGBTQ, those are real issues that are happening on campuses across the country. And it really goes down to who's the administrator, who's the you know, what are the district policies, what are they doing to keep students safe? Some schools do more than other schools do, sadly, but there really should be some type of uniform policy throughout the nation to keep these students safe.
So there's no mandate, like based upon the schools that you've worked in, the districts that you were a part of, was there any, you know, any safety mandate that was that had to be put into place, that schools, regardless of what kind of school you are, regardless of you know, the size of the students, you got to do A, B, and C? You're saying yes.
Yes. The schools that I've worked in particularly, yes. And specifically the school, believe it or not, the school where I talked about we didn't celebrate Black History Month, that school was serious about their safety. Serious.
And was that and do you find that to be the case in predominantly white schools versus Black schools, or is race not a factor in that situation? And you know, when you're talking about the implementation of that policy?
Well, you know what, because I was in administration in that particular school district, and that was a predominantly white school district. Actually, the district before that was a predominantly white school district. So good question.
Do you feel like, do you think that we take it seriously enough? And I'm saying within inner city, urban Black schools, predominantly Black schools, do we take this seriously enough? Because I feel like we kind of make light of it, that we don't really say, you know, I'm from Baltimore, so a lot of our schools were predominantly Black, but we always kind of say, oh, that's a white school thing, or that's a white student thing. But, you know, nowadays it could happen at any moment. You know what I'm saying? But the crazy part about it, Kimberly, is that as much as we try to, you know, mischaracterize a school shooter, for example, and say, oh, that's a white student, we've heard about many, and I've grown up in Baltimore, I've heard about so many school shootings after school, on school campuses, as school shootings as a result of a fight. And I'm like, that's not just a white student thing. That's something else that's happening there.
It is. And to be fair, because I don't want to mischaracterize anything, when the time periods just don't line up for me. So pre the Columbine thing, I was at I taught in a predominantly Black school district, but post Columbine, post 9/11, that's when I was in a more predominantly white school district. So it's really hard for me to say. I don't know what has taken place in those predominantly Black school districts since these things have occurred on a national level. So I wouldn't really, I would be comparing apples to oranges, and I don't want to be unfair.
Cindy D, you said the racial and political climate contributes to this culture. Violence like racism can be a learned behavior. You also said, I said it was a learned behavior. Trying to just double down on that. How much do you agree with that with Cindy D, Kimberly?
Oh my God. It is you're talking about racism.
Yeah, violence and violence and racism. We can lump them both into it.
Yes. You have no idea. Look, I have been doing this for a long time. I have met students and their families, and I'm like, okay, where they get it from? And it is definitely a learned behavior. It is. It's very rare. It has rarely occurred where I've encountered a student who that was a standalone thing, that they came from very good parents, etc. That was the rare occasion, but many times I've met these families and I'm like, okay, I understand now. You connected the dots, like, oh, okay, this child is coming out of a certain type of home, certain type of environment within a home. Got you. Yes. But I will say, even for those students, because I've worked with a lot of students over the years, even those students with love, compassion, empathy, understanding, I have been able to win those students over. And believe it or not, I've gotten their parents to a place. I'm not going to say they stop being racist. I don't know what they do on the weekends. But,
right.
But what I will say, I got them to a place of respecting me. And actually, it was very interesting because where I was an administrator, I was the only Black female. First of all, I was the only female. Then I was the only Black female, and the other administrators were white males. And then I would have these particular parents request me. I want to speak to her. That, blew my mind. So it is definitely a learned behavior, and it can be, slowly eradicated, on a case-by-case basis. But again, I don't want to make any of this stuff seem like it's simple and it's easy, because it's definitely, difficult. And sometimes when you have relationships with people, it's harder to hate somebody because of their color when you know them.
There it is.
It's
easy
to
right
hate
there.
people that you don't know. That
is much easier. All right, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to bring in our sister Corinna Denison, who has also been working in the educational field. But we're going to continue this part of the conversation as we look at the case of Jennifer Crumbley. This is the mother of a school shooter, and how she became the first parent in the country to be charged for her son's action as a school shooter. We're asking the question: should parents of school shooters, or any type of parent of any type of child who commits violence in a school setting, should they be charged? Should they be held responsible? Crew, I want to get your take on this. We'll have Corinna. We'll continue the conversation with Kimberly, and of course with you. Stay with us. That's happening, and as we kick off the second half of the show of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation, especially as we are streaming on our platform. So make sure you check us out on our home platform of blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free on all of your devices. Follow us on social media under Black Star Network. And, of course, we ask for your financial donations. Also, make sure you follow me. I'm looking for some new folks to new followers, and more importantly, continue to build the community. So you can follow me online at the Real Farajii on Instagram, at Farajii on the X platform, and let's continue to build. And we're also streaming live on Amazon News. You can check us out on Amazon News on your Fire TV. We're also on Amazon Prime Video. You can check us out on the Prime Video app on the Live TV The News, or find us on Amazon.com under Prime Video Live TV The News. We're on Freevee, so you can see us there on now under News, and we're on Plex TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just search for Black Star Network. We'll find us under Live TV, The News, and Opinion. We're continuing the conversation, talking a little bit about the latest data from the FBI, talking about schools being one of the newest locations of hate crimes in this country. And I want to shift gears just a little bit, as I've been chatting with our new contributor, Kimberly Morrow, as we had these conversations about what's going on in schools. But I want to kind of just switch just a little bit, because we have seen a precedent that has been established with the case of Jennifer Crumbley. This is the parent, her son, 15 years old at the time, Ethan, opened fire at Oxford High School in Michigan, killing 4 of his classmates and injuring 7 others. She was essentially charged for her son's actions as a school shooter. That's right. And we want to talk a little bit about this. And I want to bring in, along with my sister Kimberly, we now joined by my other sister. She is a college admissions advisor. She's been working in the educational space for years, as well as a political. My sister, Corinna Denise. Corinna, you wanted to talk about this story because of just the precedence of it, because she's a parent talking about Jennifer Crumbley. And now it's forcing us to have a different conversation about violence, and more importantly, talking about what's going on in the home that's driving these students to go the direction that they're going in, and essentially getting to a place of finding justice. Because, you know, if you have an underage child who are committing horrendous, heinous crimes, they can't go to the adult prison system. They could go to juvenile detention. But if you have an underage child whose family has contributed to their view of the world, who may even bought a gun for the child in the case of Jennifer Crumbley, then that's a different story, and accountability needs to be met. What's your take on Jennifer Crumbley and the larger story here?
Well, peace. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday, Corinna.
You know, it's, where do you even start? Like, why are you even buying your 15-year-old a gun? Let's just start there, right? Like,
who you know has suffered from mental health issues.
Well,
can we just throw this out there?
Yeah, she claims that she didn't really notice anything and that she thought that he was just having anxiety. But aside from that, I'm like, what happened to just going and playing some ball? Or even 15, you know, that's the age where you're starting to learn how to drive, right? Maybe mow the lawn, like something constructive, but to buy him a gun. So let's just start there. I mean, the parents admit that they bought the gun for their child. And then the mom even moves to blame the father for saying that it was his responsibility to make sure that the gun was secure. But, you know, so it's unfortunate. I think it really just depends on the circumstances. If parents should be charged, I think that this was justified in this case based on the evidence. In the case, they bought the gun for the child. She did see signs, but I guess she just didn't want to admit that. You know, it might have been hard for her. There probably have been other signs, even within the school and with the personnel and students, that wasn't taken into consideration. And now there's tragedy. Unfortunately, you know, you have 4 lives that were lost, and those parents will never be able to see their kids again. Now she's going to jail. The now 17-year-old is in jail for life. In all transparency, I don't know how that works. If you're in jail and your mama's in jail, I don't know if you get to see each other ever again. But she can at least live knowing that her son is alive. And unfortunately, those other parents cannot, and they have to live with that every day for the rest of their lives. But yeah, Farajii, I think this is appropriate. Now, of course, there are some other cases where you see children get access to these guns. You know, it might not necessarily be where their parents are, you know, not aware or taking precautions with the child. That does happen. But in this case, especially, yeah, I think it's justified. They should have known better. And like I said, like, why are you buying your son a gun? It's just to tell you what they were trying to cultivate in their child's upbringing from jump. And, you know, then he had a motive. And then especially we've seen the ramping up of all these school shootings over the past few years. Like, when did you even purchase the gun? Like, what were you thinking? You know, but I think sometimes parents think that or not parents per se, just people in general, like, I'm invincible and I can't be the one, it can't happen to me. And so, yeah, it's a domino effect. But yeah, I think it's justified that the mom was charged in this case.
Arlene Stark said, had not the parents provided their son with the gun, there would not have been kids dying at his hands. Yes, the parents should be held responsible. It makes sense to me, Kimberly. I mean, Jennifer Crumbley, here's a woman who she was convicted of 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter for her role in the shooting on November 30th, 2021 by her son in Michigan. And that involuntary manslaughter charge carries a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison. And she is set to be sentenced in April. The prosecutors argued that she knew her son, Ethan, was struggling with alarming mental health issues. They said instead of getting him the help he needs, she and her husband, James, bought their son the gun using the attack and attempted to flee when it was when it was becoming likely they would be charged. James Crumbly, he faces the same charges as his wife. He's scheduled to go on trial in March. What the hell is going on in their household?
And the sad part about it is the school made them aware that he was having some issues. They were concerned with these drawings he made. They did not heed to the school's warnings. They continued to send him to school. I was reading where the parents thought, well, they thought it was because he was suicidal, not homicidal. What difference does it make? You knew something was wrong with your child. You knew something was wrong with him. You didn't listen to the school trying to let you know something is wrong with your child. You sent your child to school anyway. So yeah, I agree. This falls on the shoulders of the parents as well.
Absolutely. Brother Damon Blissett said, Farajii, if you can be charged for your child being absent from school, you can be charged for your child taking a gun and shooting up the school. Come on, man.
There it is.
How does that happen? How do they call you down? Like, I get text messages if my son or my daughter is not in school for taking a sick day, but then you don't know, then you can't get shot. I mean, it does not make sense. We got to take a quick pause, but this does not make sense at all. When we come forward, I'm going to share with you some of the startling statistics around school shootings. Folks, stay with me. The conversation continues on the other side here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause, to long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We're talking about school shootings. We're talking about the case of Jennifer Crumbley, the 45-year-old mother of Ethan. Her son was 15 years old when he went into his high school and shot and killed 4 of his classmates, injuring 7 others. This is the first parent to be charged for the shooting in the whole country. And this case is going to set a major, major precedent as to how we have the conversations around guns, how we have the conversation about parent accountability and school shootings. And I've been joined by my sisters, Corinna Denise, Kimberly Morrow, as we've been talking about these tragedies and in a larger context. This is interesting because if for those who may not be familiar, I mean, with Ethan's case, you know, he's 15 years old. Back in 2021, he shoots his classmates. Like I mentioned, 4 were killed, 7 were injured. But even more so than that, the prosecution in this particular case brought up the fact that 8 months before the shooting, he had sent some text messages to his mom and to a friend saying to his mother that he was seeing a demon and clothes flying in his room. And that he sent some other text messages to his friends saying like he's seeing certain things. And then he even recorded it in his journal saying that he has no help for his mental health, problems. And essentially this is why he decided to shoot up the school. Very interesting to say the least. Now, this is one of many cases that we're hearing about this. Let me just share this with y'all very quickly, crew, and y'all share y'all take on this. In 2023, there were 346 school shooting incidents across the country, meaning that the U.S. averaged nearly 1 incident every day and saw its highest total on record since at least 1966. So the highest total of school shootings on record was last year, 346 school incidents. Y'all, there are only 365 days in a year. So that must mean that you got more school shootings happening during the year. That's not even excluding weekends for real. I mean, it's crazy. 346 school shootings, y'all. And there are, of course, some students that have died, others who have not. But the conversation, we have not talked about 346 school shootings on this platform. I'm going to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at a real epidemic here, a very important. This is coming from the U.S. News and World Report, who has been keeping track on this. 346. Kimberly, what does that say to you?
So you said there are only 365 days in a year. There are only 180 school days.
Wow.
That's
so
right.
There are only 180 school days. So that means that there are more school shootings than school days in the year. And it is, again, it's an issue that we all have to address. Why do these kids have access to guns? And even the ones, granted, some of the school shootings are not by the students themselves, but the vast majority of them are students that attend the school. They're the ones bringing the guns on campus. Why are these kids allowed to have guns? And why?
Well, I mean, some of, like we saw with the Jennifer Crumbley case, parents allow them to have, they don't put up no red tape.
I think something for context, Farajii, we need to also add So for the audience who may not know, the parents were actually in the school building the morning before their son decided to shoot everybody. They were literally there
Wow.
witnessing, a drawing that he made that was inappropriate and very alarming. And they agreed to get him some counseling, went back to work, and then a couple hours later, he decided to open fire in the school. So, it's just all of these events. And then in addition to that, at some point in time, the parents were under hiding. They decided to flee and take cover. So there's just so many things that just add to their aiding and abetting and their guilt, right?
Absolutely.
And I also like to raise the question, because of what the child was writing in his journal and his text messages. I wonder how much his parents were actually just paying him attention, right? On a social and emotional level. You want to teach me how to shoot, you're willing to take me to the range, but just those basic needs of a child, I wonder if that was something that he wasn't receiving from them, that kind of fueled this outcome that we see, unfortunately, with his, mental instability and what he decided to do. And instead of, cultivating that relationship, that parental bond, and maybe I sound extreme here, but I mean, I can't help but raise the point based on what the child was writing, that he felt like he couldn't even go to his parents. And in turn, well, you guys just decided to give me access to this weapon, so now I'm just going to take it and go shoot some folks. You know what I mean? So I think it speaks to a larger issue too, what was actually happening in that particular home with the child, that he felt so neglected. I can't even go to my parents. They're not really paying me any mind, but they want to take me to the range. Well, now I'm going to just seize the opportunity and just do what I need to do to make myself feel better. And unfortunately,
But see, here's the thing though. Here's the thing about that, Corinna, which I find interesting, is that there was some sense of awareness. Like, he wasn't completely out of his mind.
Oh no,
if he wrote, you know what I'm saying? Like, if he wrote down in his journal, like, I have mental health problems, therefore that has led me to this. That means that there's some intelligence there. There's some awareness there. That means that this was a planned situation. This wasn't in response to, this wasn't happenstance. Like, you thought about this.
Oh yeah.
You thought about this, right? And so that's part of it. Now the other thing is access to guns. Look, y'all, I know we got the right to bear arms. I get all of that. But how many of you are going to put a gun in your child's hands? Like really think about this. For black folks, I'm talking to black people, okay? Black people in America, how many of us are going hunting? We don't have a lot of hunters.
Yeah, we don't really.
That's going in. We don't even want to live in rural areas, right? We don't want to live out in the country. So if black parents are putting guns, like, where are they getting these guns from? Now, look, the crazy part is that we're having this conversation again about white students. But this also manifests itself in black communities, because we don't go shooting up the schools, we shoot up the neighborhood. We shoot up Lil Ray Ray in it, right? So we see this, right? And I think that you start to step on some black folks' toes when we start checking our own culture, because it's easy for us to say that's them. Oh man, they crazy. Bro, how many years, again, I'm from Baltimore, we've had a murder rate of 300 plus homicides a year for nearly 10 years straight. Wow. Where the population of the city of Baltimore was less than 600,000. Y'all do the math. So per capita, we were high up on the list as being one of the top cities in this country with a murder rate. So again, even our view of guns and violence, right? We expose our children, Kimberly, to so much guns and violence, right? At a very, very early young age. So no, we're not going to the range. We may not buy our child a gun and say, okay, now you're at this age to have a gun. But our children, they learn about guns. They learn about AR-15s. And I know that there's some folks that say, well, we have a right to protect ourselves. That's very well and true. But when you're talking about your child, That's a different conversation, Kimberly. Talk to me.
Well, I mean, you basically said it. I was going to say that I guess the difference is we're not buying our children the guns. That's probably why it's like, well, we don't go out and buy them the guns. Now they do get the guns from, you know, whoever they get their guns from. But in this particular issue, those parents bought their child a gun. And who buys a child who's expressing suicidal thoughts a gun? Because he could have easily killed himself and killed them. So you're absolutely correct, Farajii. We do have to look inward in our community as well. You know, growing up, I knew guys that had guns also in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And how did they get them? How did they get them, Kimberly?
Off the street, they bought them from somebody.
And what was the reason?
Protection. They wanted to protect themselves.
I think too, Farajii, I think you made such a great what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe juxtaposition. How it's happening in our community, right? Like opposed, like just say for example with the white parents, it's kind of like, oh, we're gonna take you to the range, I'm gonna get you this gun, I'm gonna teach you how to shoot. And kind of like in our communities, like to Kimberly's point, you know, they probably bought the gun from someone off the street, a friend, kind of, you know, word of mouth to acquire a gun for protection. And how are we being exposed, right? By maybe seeing someone that we know with a gun, or things we see in movies or TV or film, or just in our neighborhoods, right? Being exposed to that violence on a daily basis. To your point, mentioning, you know, the murder rate in Baltimore. So that in turn kind of develops habits and makes you want to acquire a gun. Like, I need to protect myself. So it does kind of sting sometimes, and it's a real conversation we need to have, like what's happening in our own neighborhood. But I also want to just bring it back to even the 15-year-old, well, he's now 17, who's in jail. I don't care if he was on principal's honor roll, making straight A's every semester. Why are you buying your kid a gun? You know what I'm saying? Like whether he's good mentally or not, why do you feel that your child needs to have this in their possession? And we know we don't have sensible gun laws in this country, why guns are so easily accessible. And we just got all kind of chaos happening right now, the temperament of the country, people being easily influenced to do a lot of evil and wicked things. And guns just makes it worse. You know, it creates chaos, and we're just seeing an uptick in it. And yeah, I mean, the part that really stands out for me, and I was thinking about it, but when Kimberly said it, I was just like, damn, that, you know, we only have 180 school days. And to think of, that's more than double like a whole year, you know? So imagine if we were to really do some quick math, what is that? Maybe 2 or 3 shootings per day in the school year. So yeah, this is very alarming. And yeah, parents, we really got to be talking to our kids, making sure they're good. And yeah, we shouldn't be
and here's the thing, and I agree with you. I didn't mean to cut you off, Corinna. And I'm thinking that the big thing out of this Jennifer Crumbley, Ethan Crumbley case, pay attention to your children, man. I mean, I'm serious. Like, pay attention. Now, look, trust me, I got 2 of them. So when you have human beings and you working and you going through the day-to-day and all of that, it's very easy. And I know some folks might say, you're not right, Farajii. No, I'm serious. It's very easy to overlook the small signs that lead to big red flags, right, on your day-to-day, because you're thinking about the next thing. You're thinking about getting yourself together. You're thinking about picking them up, taking them places, getting homework. You're thinking about that type of stuff. But you're not looking at the time when your child might be sitting at the table, staring off into space, or their temper, if they have brothers and sisters, how they're relating to each other, or listening to some of the things that they are being said, right? Like the way they handle unhappiness. I saw something, there was a video of First Lady Michelle Obama that was kind of circulating on social media. And she said, part of the job of being a parent is not to be your child's friend, right? She said, your child should not have to learn how to experience unhappiness when they're at school or when they're 30 years old. She said they need to learn how to deal with unhappiness at home. And I was like, damn.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not supposed to be their friends. We're supposed to be their stewards. We're supposed to be taking care of them. But sometimes in taking care of something, you got to put on boundaries. You have to discipline. You have all of these other dynamics. But when she said that they have to learn how to experience unhappiness at home, that really resonated for me, because it's like, if they don't learn how to experience unhappiness at home, if all they get in their little home, they get everything they want, their behavior goes unchecked and all of those things, then when they go out into the harsh, cold reality of this world that sees them as Black children, or that sees them as this type of child or that type of child, and they have to experience that, they don't have, Kimberly, they don't have the emotional intelligence to handle that. They don't have the mindset to deal with, oh, okay, I can't have this. And they're not used to, being put under restriction. And that just really resonated with me. I'll give you 30 seconds if you'd like to respond to that, Kimberly. What's your take on that?
That's exactly how my mother raised us. I am not your friend. That was always her saying. But I also want to say to parents, not only watch your child and look at your child, but listen to those people at school who are telling you. There are so many conversations I've had to have with parents to tell them your child needs help. You need to go get them help. And so those parents dismissed what the administrators told them, and they left their child at school. Don't dismiss what these school professionals are telling you. If they're telling you your child needs help now, then go and get them help now. Believe it or not, we do know what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's switch gears. Let's kind of just put that conversation on pause. And now, as we're talking about the health and well-being of the country, let's talk about the health and well-being of our president. President Biden, yesterday, it was shared in a scathing report that President Biden's memory may not be the best right now, leaving a lot of doubts for him to continue for another run at the presidency. We're going to talk about the Democrats' dilemma of President Biden's health versus politics in the next segment. So stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
It's an angry angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, joined by my sisters and contributors, Kimberly Morrow, and who is an educator and principal, and my sister, Corinna Denise, who is a college admissions advisor and political strategist. We're talking about now the Democrats' dilemma, President Biden's health versus politics. And for full transparency, me and Corinna were chatting last night via text message.
You might need that because I'm ready.
We might need a hazmat suit, but you know what? After our chat about this last night, I really had to think to myself, like, this is really a serious situation. You know what I'm saying? And talking to Corinna about it, like, y'all know Corinna unfiltered about everything she believes in. So it just goes to show me, like, this is really serious. This is really serious. And so I'm going to have this conversation, and I know we're probably going to have to kind of keep tabs on this conversation, but I want to be as sensitive and at the same time as realistic as possible in having this discussion about the president's health. Now, it was just reported. Now, first, let me just give you the backstory. That, of course, during the Department of Justice investigation of how he handled the documents that he took with him after his time as vice president with former President Barack Obama, they said that he willfully detained the documents, but it wasn't enough to say to cause any type of criminal charges. Okay. But then also in that same report by Mr. Hurd of the Department of Justice, they also said that Mr. Biden, our president, is an elderly man with poor memory. That he found that according to the deposition that the president gave, President Biden could not remember the years he was vice president and could not recall, quote, even within several years when his son, Beau, had died. Now, doctors are now calling for this, and I just saw this, that now there are a number of doctors who are calling for a cognitive test for dementia for this president, because doctors are reacting to this assessment and saying that forgetting key events like the death of a loved one were the hallmark of cognitive decline, a precursor for dementia, and that they want him to take some cognitive tests to prove to the public that he is mentally sound. Corinna, I'm gonna give you the first go at this. What do the Democrats do with this? What does the American people do with this, especially now that we're already, what, 3 primaries in? I think 2 primaries in, no, 4 primaries in, 2 for the GOP, 2 for the for the Democratic Party. There are no other candidates that can intervene at this point. So we're in a position where we already see that Trump is getting closer and closer to being the nominee. We know Biden is going to be the nominee, but you got this big elephant in the room about his health and his ability to recall events, to think, to be competent, to be present. What do the Democrats do with this?
Well, let's just start here. Why do we have this quote unquote elephant in the room, right? Because this is bait from the opposition that we're eating up. And the Democrats need to fight back. All this politeness needs to go out the door. And to think that you would talk about the man's child, his son, that is a low blow, Farajii, to bring that up, that he can't remember his son's death.
I agree.
Hold on. That is a low blow. And we need to pay attention to this moment because let's just be clear. We got a couple of old men who are in this race. I don't know why. Well, no, let me backtrack. We do know why Biden's age is an issue. And I'm going to be very clear right now. This fear is being fueled by the fact that his second in command is a Black woman, Vice President Kamala Harris. She is too close to power for their comfort, okay? And after the 8 years of our first Black president, that was enough for them. We should have never obtained the highest office in the land. Something else I want to mention too was very important. We need to become familiar with the line of succession, okay? So we have our president, our vice president, Speaker of the House, then it would be the president pro temp, and then the cabinet secretaries, okay? So honestly, I'm not worried about President Joe Biden. We have to clearly understand what we're up against. And hold on now, let's just be clear. He was old, if we want to put him in that category. He was old back in 2020 when we elected him, was he not? And if I'm not mistaken, Donald Trump is around the age now that Joe Biden was during the 2020.
And I agree. I agree.
Bernie Sanders, a fan favorite, around the same age as Biden. Furthermore, we got a lot of old folks in the Congress and the Senate. I've also said that on this show. Dianne Feinstein, okay, before she died, came back into the Senate chamber in a wheelchair. She could not comprehend why Vice President Kamala Harris was presiding over the Senate. That is her responsibility as vice president, to be the president of the Senate. So I say all this to say, I am not worried. If Joe Biden, God forbid something happens to him, we have our second in command. I'm more concerned about who's third in command right now, that Mike Johnson, that Speaker of the House. He has to go. We need to get Hakeem Jeffries in. We're worried about the wrong thing because guess what? These are the choices. We need to deal with it. Hopefully the lesson learned is you should have voted in the primaries of 2016. You wanted someone young? There were a whole bunch of young people then. We don't see this impeding his job because honestly, Farajii, this administration has gotten a lot done, even more so than 44. Let's just be honest. And
here's the thing though, Corinna.
While we spend our time debating this man's age, the GOP are planning and plotting to end our very humanity. That is a reality. We don't have time.
Hold on, Corinna. I gotta find my I gotta find my hazmat suit very quickly. I'm gonna let Kimberly respond while I'm looking for my hazmat because you're bringing too much smoke my way. I'm trying to survive here. You've been waiting all day to get in. That's the truth. Fiery Fridays. All right, Kimberly.
I wasn't on the call with you and Corinna, but me and Corinna talked about this too. And her and I agree. Listen, his second in command is willing and she is able. And I don't care. Nikki Haley had the nerve to say, oh, well, we should be worried about Kamala Harris. No, Nikki Haley, we're worried about you. Kamala Harris can hold her own. I would not be mad if Kamala Harris had to assume the position of president. I do agree with Corinna. I would be concerned about Mike Johnson being third in command. So we definitely
that would naturally happen. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though. Kimberly and Corinna. We know that that would happen if something were to happen to this president. And I'm not saying that I'm not calling for it. I'm just saying that if something where if his health goes into a decline, we know that that will happen. It will be the vice president will be Kamala Harris. So that's already established, right? And look, I'm not trying to look at this from a political sense. I'm looking at this from a pure sense of here we are in a very situation, right? We got a Donald Trump, 77 years old. He got memory problems. He got all of this stuff that's going on with him. And I'm talking about his health. But then you do have a president, and Joe Biden, who has some health. Now, look, politics aside, you got to ask yourself the question, why aren't we even concerned about a man who, if based upon what this report is saying, can't remember the time that his son passed away, even though it was a low blow. And I get that. And I totally understand it. But at the same time, shouldn't the American people be concerned that their president may be losing touch with certain elements of reality or may be forgetting things? I mean, I think you
concerned with the hundreds of people in the Congress and the Senate who are older than Joe Biden.
But here's Corinna, as I mentioned to you yesterday. Hold on though. Here's the only thing. The thing I mentioned to you is that yes, you're absolutely correct. But the difference is that those hundreds of people are in Congress and not the president of the United States. The difference is that this man, and I'm speaking of President Biden, who has done some great things for our people, but he's also running up against Trump, right? So he's in the ultimate seat. He's in the seat of power. This is not about, it is possible that you can be concerned about more than one thing. It's possible we can be concerned about Trump with his charges and legal issues, but then it is also possible that you can be concerned about Biden and his health issues. I think that's a normal thing. Kimberly, talk to me.
Yeah, I see, Farajii, I do see what you're saying, but here's the thing. The Republicans, and I love how people love to, when it's the Democratic president, Ronald Reagan had the same issue when he was president. And for some reason, that's okay. Donald Trump is currently having the same issue. How many times has he said on the campaign stuff that he's running against Obama? He doesn't even know who he's running against. How many times has he said he's called Nikki Haley? Well, when she was over the House, she didn't accept our help. He's confusing her with Nancy Pelosi. So he has an issue too. But for some reason, I get what you're saying. Well, Biden's the president, but Trump is running for president. So if he wins, we're in the same position. What's going to be different?
And Farajii, I do hear you when you say the concern for the president's health. But what I'm speaking to is if the opposition did not make this a soundbite for us to gobble up, would we be discussing it otherwise? Honestly, would we be discussing it otherwise? Would this be an elephant in the room? And that's what I'm speaking to. And it's like we just taking the bait and we're running away with it. I'm not saying
that's the thing. I don't think this is about taking the bait.
But that's why you have a line of succession. God forbid something happens. There has been a time already. I can't recall exactly where Vice President Kamala Harris. She was technically the commander in chief, even if it was for under an hour.
If the vice president becomes president, that's just what it is. That's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, y'all, for all of those who are watching, crew members, y'all watching, y'all telling me that this is not a concern. How many? And I'm saying on a fundamental human level, we're not concerned. We should 70. I remember I came across some data. 76% of folks in America that was polled at that time, and I think it was either from the USA Today or New York Times. I got to go back. But there was 76% people say that this is a very real concern. Now, is that wrong for us to at least have a concern and say and stop and not making it political? It's not making it political. We should be concerned
with these polls. Okay, let's get some context.
Okay.
I want to know the demographics of the people who were surveyed in the poll. How many people in this poll? Usually when you look at the fine print, it's probably like 1,000 people, maybe 2,000 people. It's millions of people in this country. So these polls are almost always inaccurate. Let's just be honest about that. I'm not saying it's supposed to be a concern, not a concern at all. But why I'm not concerned is because I see who's second in command, who is ready to be president as we speak. Just on paper.
Is the country ready? Here's the thing.
Well,
here's the thing.
Who are we defining as a country? Because you got one part of the country who wants to rewrite.
You gotta say the whole. You gotta say everybody.
They got
you gotta say everybody.
2025.
Hey, guess what though? If you live in the boundaries of but Corinna, if you live in the boundaries of the United States of America, and we know that on the other side, regardless of whether you're with Trump, MAGA, whatever the case is, you're in this country. You're in this country. We can't operate. We can't kind of have blinders on. And I remember, I never read this article, but they was like, you know what? MAGA people are actually a part of this country too. I never forget that. I think The Atlantic did a piece on that. Like MAGA believers, MAGA supporters are part of the country too. You got to think about the other people. You have to think about the whole of the country, because we're not living separated or in an isolated space. We're literally are interrelated. So what happens with one group of people will affect another group of people. That's the whole thing about this, the whole thing. And if we're talking about,
we're in a lot of trouble because we have more egregious laws. I mean, damn, what will it take for us to fully comprehend what is happening in this country? Supposedly country is more so a criminal enterprise. We had Roe overturned, which was the entry point, affirmative action, and they want everything else coming after us. So unfortunately, we are here with two old men. If we want to see this turn into what it's supposed to be or what it says on paper, we have to organize. We have to vote and re-elect our current president. We already see his second command. And that's the thing. Like, why are we worried even if, God forbid something happens to the president? Look at Trump. To Kimberly's point, he can't recall. He doesn't even know. He thought Nikki Haley was the Speaker of the House. So if we have to make a choice between the two, we better know what's good for us and for our humanity. I'm worried about my family, my well-being, our people, because they have written it in plain sight for all to see. But for whatever reason, we are still blinded, Farajii. So I'm not saying it's not supposed to be a concern. But again, to this age thing, we really need to dead this conversation, because if we're going to talk about the president,
it's not going to hey, correct. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. The president had his press conference last night. He showed that he was angry. He showed that he said, look, I can still do this job. I'm still in the game, right? This thing is not going to die. Over the next couple of months, this thing is not going to die. Listen, this is America. In America, we're not in a culture where we're looking at the pure facts. We're not in a culture where we're just looking at the merits or the achievements or the accomplishments of, no. This is America. There's a whole bunch of other bullshit, a whole bunch of other stuff that indeed you have this much of probably of actual work, you could be like, oh yeah, he did that. But in the rest of the stuff, from social media misinformation to alternative facts and all of those things, that's what people are hearing. People are not looking at, oh, he did this, he did that. They're looking at, when we're talking about politicians, just think about this real quick. When we're talking about choosing politicians, how many of us are more influenced by the way a politician looks, the way they articulate words, their family? All this stuff is on the outside.
And a lot of us
but when we're talking about ideas, because a lot of
politics. We have to be honest. There's
in this country, our political system is not, we don't advocate new ideas. We advocate what looks good. The great thing about what we saw with President Barack Obama is that his idea of hope and change and the way he and his family looked actually came together to create a perfect storm of like, I can see this guy running this country.
Well, maybe
he looked a certain way.
In 2016, we could see some hope and change. The optics would look significantly different. But now we're here and we all have to live with the damage. And we can decide for more damage, but we got to do what we need to do. And I'm going to just say this last thing, what I said to you last night. God forbid anything should happen. Like Tiffany Haddish say, she ready. VP is ready. So I ain't worried.
All right. All right, here we go. Sister Debbie, you said if we stop talking about it, then it will go away. Let's talk about what's really going on in the Black community. I don't have a problem with us talking about what's going on in the Black community, Kimberly, but I don't think that if we stop talking, I'm gonna push back on this, Sister Debbie. You know, I love you, but the fact is, I don't think we can stop talking about it. I think we got to have some different conversations about it, because if we find ourselves, like if the president's health really does decline and you're not upfront with the American people, right, then that is going to add more to the distrust that people have in their government, because we've been covering up a situation instead of really dealing with the situation head on. I get it. I know what's at stake. But there is undergirding all of this passion and this emotion is some real fear, which I truly understand. But this country cannot move forward out of a space of fear. Talk to me, Kimberly. You got 30 seconds.
Well, let me tell you, I would choose Kamala Harris to be president if Joe Biden is reelected over whoever Trump is going to choose as his VP.
That's fine.
Which it looks like it might be Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Okay.
So I say vote for Biden regardless, because I'm not trying to have something happen to Trump and then we get stuck with Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's what I have to say.
You won't even have to worry about that, because if it's Trump, it's just going to be full dictatorship. Then you're going to have an old man for life.
I don't see that happening. I'm gonna just disagree with that. I'm not on that gravy train. I'm not on that train. I'm gonna be honest with you, Corinne.
It's not a
train. And you my sister, and I got nothing but love for you. I don't see that happening. I just don't see that happening. I don't give Trump that much power. I don't give him that much power.
Oh, it's not him. You think he's a one-man show?
No, I don't give him that much power.
In that. Okay.
I don't give him that much power. I think we're at a very, very and I know we got to close out the show, but I don't give Trump that much power. I don't think we're going to see this rise of dictatorship in the sense that the people aren't going to respond in kind. Yeah, you might have a few people, and you might attempt some things, but consciousness is a part of is among us today, right? And we've been talking about this with white voters.
Yeah, he
at some point
on January 6th, 2021.
I just don't see it. I don't see it. And if it happens, I will be the first to be like, you know what, I was wrong. I don't see it. I don't see that. I feel like this country is going through a transition, but at the root of this transition, there's going to be justice. There's going to be some truth, right? Everybody keeps saying 2024 is the year of truth telling with Kat and Monique and everybody else, right? I just don't see it. I just don't see it. And I refuse to come from a space like those of us, the three of us, and all of the folks in our crew, as if we're going to just sit idly by on the sidelines and not do anything to change the course of this country. We have power. Even if you have a Trump in office, you still got to handle the interests of over 300 and nearly 20 million people.
Fight and battle with someone who's against your humanity, who doesn't care what you have to say or care about your well-being, rather than just putting people in who you have a chance to push and pressure and get things done.
That man is still going to be up against some walls. I don't care what anybody says, because guess what? I think that the American people, we're coming to a new place. And I think black people in this country, white people in this country are going to say, you know what? If you put that man in power, you're going to see he's going to come up against a different force. We may not see it right now, but I truly believe that just because of consciousness, people are tired. White supremacy is falling. Racism is falling. Sexism is falling. Like, we're seeing all of these mental systems breaking down.
Then right hopefully with that being said, Farajii, since people are so tired, they're not going to dwell on the man's age and look at.
I gotta go. We gotta stay right there. We gotta stay right there.
I hope I didn't tire you up.
Where's my damn hazmat suit, man?
I know I burned you a little bit, but you know I still have love for you.
You always. I ain't got no more love for y'all, man. Look, hey, Corinne, Denise, Kimberly, Marlo, thank y'all so much. What'd you say, Kimberly?
I said it's they taught it the culture.
Hey, look, I'd rather us have honestly, I'd rather for us to be going back and forth to talking about it versus not discussing it at all. So this is good. This is good. It's when you don't talk about it. It's like somebody being in a relationship where you ask them what's wrong, and they be like, "Ain't nothing wrong." And you know when you, as women, y'all know that when y'all say ain't nothing wrong to a man, he be like, "You are." You be like, "No, we good."
Hey, don't start.
No, we ain't good. Let's sit down. Let's have a conversation. All right, ladies, I gotta go. Thank y'all so much for joining me. As always, Coretta Denise, Kimberly Morrow. Make sure y'all check them out every Friday here on The Culture. I thank y'all. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all for being so good for the culture. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. All right, folks, I got to jump off of here. Make sure you support us here at Black Star Network. Do your due diligence. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Follow us on social media. And, of course, give something to us today. Man, big shout out to all of you on the crew. Thank you so much. I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend. Make sure you follow me at The Real Farajii on Instagram. I would love to get your take on this. Let's continue the conversation. Y'all may agree or disagree with me or not, but guess what? We got to talk about it because this thing, I don't think is going to go away, but let's continue the conversation. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk on Monday for another exciting edition of The Culture right here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Peace.